Hey guys, hope you are having a good day so far. Today I thought I would check out one of my games that I played a few days ago on my main chess.com account. And I was just gonna kind of show y'all what it takes to beat kind of an intermediate or advanced player. So hope y'all learned something from this video, and thanks for checking it out. Okay, so my opponent is rated 1684 and from Spain. And I have the white pieces, so I'm going to be going, we're trying to go Queen's Gambit. So I open with d4, and he goes knight f6. And I don't want to go, or I can't even go Queen's Gambit at this point because Queen's Gambit only works when he pushes a d5 first. So I can't go Queen's Gambit. I can't push e4 because then he would just take and then be up a pawn for no reason. So I do this other opening that I like a lot, and I just go c4. And what this does is this adds more pressure to the center. So these two pawns are adding pressure to the center without them being directly threatened by this knight. So this knight's not threatening anything, and this pawn's also keeping this knight from going here. So, and it's just getting pieces out. It's making a way for me to put my knight here without that knight stopping this pawn from moving here or moving there. So it's getting the pawn out before the pieces. And so he moves his pawn out to fianchetto's bishop, and that just means to put this bishop on the longest diagonal and have it there for when after he castles. And so I just move my knight out, like I said. This is adding pressure here, so maybe I can move e4 later if I wanted to, or I can also push d5. And so he just goes ahead and fianchettos. And then I also want to fianchetto here because this is giving him a nice diagonal that's hitting my rook. And so I also want to put my light squared bishop on diagonal that hits one of his rooks, just to keep the game kind of balanced and even. And it's also considered part of the opening theory for this opening. So he just castles, and then I just fianchetto, and then he pushes d6. And what this does is this allows his light squared bishop a way out of the back rank, and it doesn't block this knight. This knight can still go c6 if it needs to. So it's just kind of an important move, and it also provides support if he wants to do this later on, or if he wants to move his rook to e8, and then push this pawn and kind of fight for the center, which is a good idea because his right side's already fully developed, and my right side is not fully developed. So fighting for the center is a really good idea for him right now. And so I just want to kind of solidify my defenses here, create this pawn chain, very strong pawn chain. And then this is where the first book move or non-book move happens. And the reason why this is not the best move, and I don't even know if it was on the top 3, is because it blocks this knight from going to like one of the only squares it should be on. It should be on this square to block this bishop from being here. Now this pawn is a better block, but now this knight only has 2 ways of escaping the back row, and that is through knight a6 or that's through d7. So you don't want to go d7 because then that just blocks in this light square bishop. It has no way of escaping, because then if you do knight d7 and then you're like later on you're like, oh, I want to move this pawn out of the way so then I can fianchetto this side. Well, if you move this and you push this, then this pawn has no defender, and so I can just go over here and just take the pawn, which would be really bad. So you don't want to do that. because that just leads to awful things. So I just bring my knight to e2, and I didn't want to bring it to f3 because that's just blocking this bishop. Like, why even have the bishop on this nice long diagonal that hits the center and it hits this rook if you're just going to block it with a knight? I mean, that's what he did, but playing black, it's usually supposed to be more defensive than white. White's supposed to be attacking more. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to keep it as like a more of an attacking game. And best move here, computer's saying, is just to push e3, which is, it is the idea of even going b3 in the opening to begin with, is to be able to push e3. But I wanted to kind of keep my pawns closed in, kind of keep the game a little bit safer, because this is a more higher rated opponent than the other ones in my other videos. I mean, this isn't like in 1,000 or anything like that. So he kind of knows what he's doing more, which I didn't. I want to just play solid, you know. So move there, and then he moves his knight to the spot that, as I was saying, was an awful square for the knight. And even the evaluation bar, it goes from basically even to like 0.4, 0.5. So it's not a very good move at all. Just because of that, like it just blocks in this bishop that could be useful in the game. It could be helping him out, like, you know, on a6 or something, if he had moved this out, moved this pawn and just kept the knight here for a little bit longer or something, you know. But he moves there, and best move would have been, you know, rook on the center file here, because rooks on center files they're key in middle games. They're always key in pawn pushes, in anything that's going to help you win the game tactically, you know. So, and the reason why I did this move, and it's considered an inaccuracy, the reason why I did it was because at this point of the game I was trying to think about what he's trying to do here and what are his attacking options. And the only attacking option I saw from him at this point was that he could go here, and that's the only spot his knight can go at this point. It can't go here because of my pawns. Can't go here because of my pawns. Can't move here because the other knight's here, and you don't want to move back. So the only place that it could go is here, and this is actually, it's a decent move, or it would be at this point, because my pawn here is weak and nothing's guarding it. So I didn't want him to get his knight out with tempo, like with getting it out with having an attack on one of my pieces, because that would have moved his knight out of the way, and then this bishop would have been able to come out and attack while also attacking this pawn. So that's a lot of positive for him and a lot of negative for me. So I didn't want him to be able to do that. So I just moved my queen over there just to kind of guard this pawn, just trying to make him think, well, why even go here, because this pawn's already guarded now, so there's no point in moving here. So any of his attacks that he is thinking of doing, they just stay behind, because he doesn't want to like be pushed back again, you know. So that's why I did that. And of course I thought of castling. Usually you want to castle fast, but I thought, well, I mean, I can do this move and then castle, you know. It doesn't really, move order doesn't really matter right now, because, you know, we're not attacking each other, we're just kind of setting up for attacks. So he pushes e5, kind of basically the first attack of the game, with the idea of he's wanting me to take the pawn. And usually if your opponent pushes a pawn into range of being captured by you, you don't usually want to take it, because, well, I mean, it depends if your opponent knows what he's doing. But this dude, 1600, he probably knows what he's doing. So he's wanting me to take, because after I take, then he can activate this knight that's not being very active right now. because right now it can only go on this square. So he's trying to get his pieces active, which is it's a really good idea to try different ways of getting your pieces active, and usually that's through pawn pushes and stuff like that. So it's a good idea by him. It's a good idea because he's wanting me to take, and then he takes with the knight, and then that's also threatening my queen. So then I have to move my queen, and he gets a nice spot for his knight to sit, and then he also gets this bishop out, like maybe right here on f5 or something like that. So see, if I would have taken, then computer does not like that move, and best move for black would be e5, because that's what gives him the most out of the position. It's what's threatening like one of my most important pieces. So that's why I did not want to take that pawn. So what I do is I just castle, and that's the best move. You usually want to castle as quickly as possible. And this, I didn't really see this as a threat. He can't really. I mean, he could take. I would just take with the pawn, and that would just be a trade. You wouldn't want, if he took here, you would not want to take with the queen, because then he could do a discovered attack where he he moves his knight like here maybe, just to get an attack on the queen. I mean, this doesn't have to be a good move in itself, but the idea of moving this knight out of the way to attack the queen, just letting this bishop have more range, doing this, that would be a good idea in itself, you know. So I didn't want him to even have an attack on any of my pieces to begin with, because that's usually when you start losing your position, is when you start getting attacked and you don't know what to do. So I didn't want it to come to that, so I didn't let it. I just castled, and then he moves. Best move, moving the rook on the e file, because you want to keep this pressure high. You want to have more attackers and more defenders. So there's more defenders on this pawn, and there's more attackers, because if this ever happens, and if this ever happens, then this rook has a way of getting to that knight, so I can't ever move this knight at that point. So you just want to have more attackers and defenders. And I just moved my bishop a little bit. I wanted to connect my rooks here, and also have a way for this rook to get out, maybe to d file or e file to defend or add support, you know. And they're saying that b3 is a good move, and it is. It does seem like a good move, yeah, because it's adding defense, and it's also creating a pawn chain on this side of the board. And so then if he does this, then this pawn here already has a defender, and so then I can move my queen off of this file, because this file right now, my queen's not really doing anything. It's not really being very active. It can't really go anywhere. It can't move here. It can't move here. So it's not really doing much right now. So if I could get a another defender on this pawn, then I could move my queen and get it more active. So I think that's what the computer is seeing. I just wanted to kind of complete my development, so that's why I moved my bishop out instead. And then he does a mistake here by pushing the pawn. He pushes the pawn too far, because now where it was, it had this knight, it had this pawn guarding, it had this rook guarding. Now it doesn't have any of that, because he pushed it, and now the only thing that's guarding the pawn is this rook, which is not enough, because I have a knight on the pawn, I have a queen on the pawn, I have a bishop on the pawn. They're all hitting that pawn. So so that pawn has to go. He also has a knight, but that's still 2 defenders against 3 attackers. So that pawn's gonna fall. And the computer here considers taking with the knight as a better move, And I would agree with that, because if, or as I played it, I'm basically giving my opponent the chance of taking one of my only like pretty stable attacks, like taking it away, because my bishop was here. It's all safe, and it's ready to hit this rook if it ever needs to. But once I do this, then this rook's up for grab. I mean, this bishop's up for grabs by this knight. And what that does, if he does take the bishop, is that it opens this diagonal up more for this bishop. So he activates his dark squared bishop, and I lose my activated light squared bishop. So that's not a very good trade-off. Not a very good trade-off for me, which is why they're suggesting not the bishop to take, but the knight to take, because then that's attacking this knight. It's attacking this weak pawn. So he kind of is forced to take with his knight if I move my knight there. And once he takes, then yeah, he has a more active bishop, but so do I. So it's kind of still balanced. But as I played it, I took with the bishop, and so he gets more of an activated bishop, and I don't even have a bishop on that side anymore. So here he makes another mistake because he pushes the pawn, and why this is a mistake is because it allows this move. And not to say that I couldn't have done this move like anyway, it's just after I move here, instead of moving this pawn at all, maybe he should have moved his queen here just to add a defense. I don't think this pawn was ready to move yet, because there's no defense on d6. There's no defending this square, not just the pawn, but the actual square. The square is what's important at this point, not the pawn. So the queen should have come like maybe over here or something like that to defend the square, and then once the square was defended, then he can move the pawn, because you don't want my knight coming all the way up here to attack the bishop and the rook. It's not safe for him. So he moves there, and d6 is an unprotected square, and I don't really follow along with the computer's plan here, because I moved backwards, and the computer really does not like that, because I'm playing as white. I'm supposed to be the one attacking, and he has no attackers right now except for maybe this dark square bishop. So this is the most opportune time for me to attack, which I don't take it because I don't really see it as a good trade. Because if I were to move here, I should say I did, then the most I would get out of it would be this bishop. And this bishop I don't see as a threat. I don't see it as valuable. It might as well just be a pawn, because it's not contributing to his attacking me at all, And I mean, there's this rook here, but once I move my knight here, then he's just going to move his rook. He'll just like move it maybe to here, and then just kick away my knight, maybe just force it back. Or actually no, because at that point, if I do this, and then he moves there, then I guess it wouldn't actually force it back, yeah, because I have this nice move, which kind of solidifies it there, because it adds protection to it. But then also a way to counter that would just be for him to move move this pawn here, and then threaten that defense of my knight. Once he gets rid of the defense of my knight, if I did this, then he can just take the knight. So that's why I didn't really do that. I didn't really see it as a good option. All this, I didn't really want to commit that far. So I Just kind of wanted to wait just to see what he would do, because he hasn't really attacked at this point very much, so I'm just kind of waiting for him to attack. And so he just takes this pawn, and I just take back. So I'm just like keeping my pawn chain there all intact. And then he finally moves his knight to this square, and so his bishop can now be fully activated if it wanted to be, you know. So that's why it's considered a pretty good move, you know. It's attacking my queen, forcing my queen back. So it's looking all right for him. And then I do a not the best move, probably not even top 3 move here, where I move back to this awful diagonal that doesn't do anything for my queen. What I should have done was stay on this nice diagonal, because this diagonal's hitting his king. It's not directly threatening his king, but it is on the same diagonal. So that's just it's a potential threat, which is always a good idea to have. But I didn't do that. I didn't really see it. I was just kind of trying to stay at a good pace here, trying to keep up with him, not trying to fall behind in time. So I move there, and then he gets his bishop out, but on the wrong square, because if you see here, the bishop being here it doesn't make any sense for him, because I mean, obviously the rook being on the center file there's like no use for it now, because the bishop's blocking the rook. It's just blocking the rook in. So if I push this pawn at this point, then there's no contesting it. The rook can't contest it because of this bishop being here. I think a better move, if you wanted to move the bishop, would have been like to here, because then you would be like threatening. You would be threatening my my queen. Now, I guess the computer is saying that there is this, but then at that point, you could just move here, and then if you wouldn't, because that kind of looks bad for black, right? But if you try and push and get rid of the bishop some more, then there's also like this, and then you have to move the rook, and then I just move, you know, I just move like my bishop back here or something like that, you know, and that would have just made me like move all my pawns, and then kind of like unformulate my pawn chain. So there was that. But he moved here, and I saw his plan here, which it's to bring this bishop on c4, because it would be guarded by this nice knight here, and it would be attacking my queen and my knight and my rook. And I didn't really want that to happen, so what I did was I moved b3, and I don't really know why this is considered. Okay, yeah, I do. The reason this is considered an inaccuracy is because it's weakening this diagonal. Because this bishop now has less pieces to go through until it gets to my rook. Yeah. So that's why it's considered not a very good move. It seems like a good move though, because now his bishop can't move here and threaten me. And neither can his knight, so it's kind of a nice move in a way. But what they're saying is to move here, and I mean that I just didn't really want to like keep moving the same pieces. Like my pawns do need to start marching forward and stuff, you know, just in case it gets close to an endgame. So I didn't want to just keep on hiding in the back. And he is starting to attack more, so I kind of need to be more forceful with my moves also. And so he pushes a5, and the idea behind this is that he's going to come down here and kind of break apart my pawns here, so he can end up getting his bishop to come here and threaten me. So that's why he moved there. And so I don't really see that as a threat at the moment. So I kind of just developed my rook to e1, just kind of trying to put it on one of the center files. And so he pushes a4, going through the idea that I was talking about earlier, where he's trying to break apart my pawns. And then I do this knight f4 move. And if you look, the computer is suggesting that I do that move before I move my rook to e1. It's suggesting that I move it at this point. And the reason that is because if I move it now, there's no point in doing this. Because now if he did this, then yeah, then it would be really good for me, because then I can just take the bishop, take one of his only attackers, and he's forced to take back, like with the rook or something like that, and then I can just take the pawn. So there'd be no more point in even going a4 if I moved my knight before I moved my rook, but I didn't. And I did after that move though, because then I saw what how I could defend. I just saw it like a move later than I probably should have. Still alright though. My position's still pretty good. It's an even game, so wasn't too worried. And then he mistakenly takes here instead of getting his bishop out of harm's way, and so he allows me to take one of his only attackers, which I do, and then he takes back. But now the game's in my favor because he just lost one of his best attackers, and I traded him off. I traded my not so active knight for his very active bishop, so it was a good trade for me, and that's why the computer's in my favor now. And so I just take that pawn that took my pawn on b3, opening up this file here, and I mean, I want him to take my rook here, because if he takes, then I can just take, and then I have this nice open file. So I want him to take my rook. I don't really want to take his, because if I took his rook, then he would take, and then he would have a nice open file. So I'm not going to take his rook, but he takes mine. So at that point, I was really happy in my position. Thought I was doing really well, and kind of could tell that he wasn't playing his best, which I don't know. I mean, he was using his time, trying to find good moves. I guess he might have been kind of scared or something like that. I mean, I know I'm scared when I go against 1800s and stuff like that. So that might have been what it is. I don't know. And then he does an inaccuracy here. He tries to centralize his knight, but that just allows me to take it, and it kind of alleviates more of the pressure. So a better move, the computer's saying, is to do this move, and this might look kind of counterintuitive because you're moving your knight back, but what you're really doing is that you're just repositioning it. You're like you're moving it there so then you can access these other squares, or you can defend this square, something like that, or you can move this pawn up and you can contest that square. So that's the idea of moving it back sometimes. You have to move back sometimes before you can move forward. You don't always just move forward. So that was the problem with that move. And so I just take, which is considered the best move. And he takes with the wrong piece here. And the reason why this is the wrong piece is because now the 8th rank doesn't have any protection. The rank that his king's on does not have any protection. So this rook is just free to come up here and just antagonize his king. And he can't really do anything about it now, If he had taken with the pawn, which is considered the best move for him to do, even that wouldn't have been very good. Even that, it still says I have an advantage on the evaluation bar, because now this pawn and this pawn they're separated. Now they're weaker. they can't really help each other out. So that's what he should have done, but he took with the queen instead, and that allows me to come up here and check him, which is considered the winning move in this game. And he can't really do anything else but bring this bishop back. He doesn't want to give up his rook or his queen, so he just moves his bishop back here. And so I continue with the pressure and add another attacker to where there's 2 attackers against his 1 defender. So there's no way he can really protect his bishop now, except for doing this. And this is just basically a trade-off in my favor because I get a rook for a bishop. So I just take, and then he takes, and then that's a winning endgame for me. So at that point, he just resigned after moving there because he saw that he was down in material by quite a bit, and then that I would just win the game. So that's basically the game. I don't know, it was a really fun game. And yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. See you later. Bye.